The city never slept, but from the top floor of Zhao International, it sometimes felt like time stopped just for her. Elena Zhao stood before the glass wall of her office, the night skyline glittering like a crown beneath her feet. Her reflection, sharp suit, sharper eyes, stared back at her with the kind of calm that came only from years of winning. Below her, traffic hummed, horns blared, and lives continued in their insignificant loops. She pressed her hand against the cold glass, as if to remind herself she was above it all. Her assistant, Daniel, entered quietly, clutching a stack of documents. "The merger contracts, Ms. Zhao. They need your signature tonight if we want to close before quarter's end." Elena didn't turn. "Of course they do," she murmured. Her voice was smooth but carried a blade underneath. She pivoted, signed the papers with quick, elegant strokes, and handed them back. "Send them to legal. I'll review the press statement in the morning." "Yes, ma'am." Daniel hesitated, glancing at her. "You should go home. It's past midnight." Elena allowed herself the ghost of a smile. "Home," she echoed. "I don't even know what that word means anymore." Daniel said nothing, only nodded and slipped out. When the door clicked shut, silence filled the office like a heavy fog. Elena leaned back in her chair, eyes half closed. Success had a strange sound. Quiet, sterile, lonely. Her phone buzzed. She frowned at the screen. Her mother. She let it ring. Then ring again. Finally, she sighed and answered. "Elena, are you still at work?" Came the familiar voice, soft but weary. "Yes," she replied flatly. "You work too hard. You'll burn yourself out one day. I'll rest when the company stops depending on me." Her mother sighed. "You sound just like your father." The line went quiet after that. Elena didn't want to think about her father, his ambition, his sudden death, the legacy she'd inherited like a curse wrapped in gold. She ended the call, tossed the phone aside, and rose. Outside, rain had begun to fall, streaking the glass with trembling silver lines. Her driver had left hours ago. She didn't mind driving herself. It was the one thing that still felt like freedom. Down in the garage, the sound of her heels echoed off the concrete. She slid into her sleek black sedan and started the engine, the soft hum filling the space. The rain was heavier now, hammering against the windshield as she pulled onto the empty streets. She drove fast, the city lights blurring past. Her mind raced faster. Share prices, rival companies, the next deal, the next conquest. She didn't notice the flashing light ahead until it was too late. A truck swerved across the intersection. She hit the brakes, heart lurching, tires screaming against the wet road. For a moment, everything slowed, the wheel spinning beneath her hands, her breath caught halfway between a curse and a prayer. Then came the crash. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. The world turned over itself. When the car finally stopped, Elena tasted blood. Her vision swam. Pain, white, absolute, shot through her legs. She tried to move, but her body refused. Panic surged up her throat. She could hear someone shouting outside, footsteps splashing through the rain. And for the first time in years, the woman who commanded empires whispered into the dark, "Please, don't hurt me. I can't walk." The first thing Elena noticed was the smell, antiseptic and rain-soaked earth. Then came the pain, dull at first, then sharp enough to drag a gasp from her chest. She blinked against the harsh white light above her, confusion clawing through the fog in her head. Tubes ran from her arm, machines hummed softly beside her. Her legs felt heavy, foreign, as though they didn't belong to her body anymore. When she tried to move, nothing happened. Panic set in, raw and immediate. "Hello," she croaked, her throat dry as sand. "Is anyone there?" A nurse appeared, quick and calm, her face wearing the professional smile that never reached her eyes. "Ms. Zhao, you're awake. You're in St. Augustine's Rehabilitation Center. You were in an accident 3 days ago." Elena's pulse quickened. "My company, my phone. Everything's been taken care of for now," the nurse interrupted gently. "You need to rest." "I don't rest," Elena snapped, but her voice faltered when she tried to sit up. Her body refused her command. It was like shouting into a void. "Why can't I feel my legs?" The nurse's practiced expression flickered, just for a second. "Your spine was injured in the crash. The doctors say it's temporary, but what?" Elena demanded. But it will take time. And work. You'll be starting therapy tomorrow. The nurse adjusted the drip, murmured something reassuring, and left. The door clicked shut, leaving Elena in a sterile silence broken only by the rhythmic beep of the monitor beside her bed. She stared at the ceiling, her breath shaking. For the first time in her life, there was nothing to control, no deals to close, no board to silence, no empire to defend. Only her and the reality she couldn't escape. The next morning, a man's voice woke her. "You're Elena Zhao, right? The famous ice queen of Zhao International." Elena turned her head sharply, glaring. The man stood at the foot of her bed, tall and broad-shouldered, his brown hair slightly tousled, his scrubs rolled at the sleeves. He carried a tablet under one arm and wore a smile that looked far too casual for a medical professional. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Jack Miller," he said. "Physical therapist. I'll be working with you. I don't need therapy. I need a neurosurgeon and a flight back to the city." Jack chuckled. "You'll get both in due time. But right now, you need to learn how to move again. And for that, you're stuck with me." Elena scowled. "Do you know who I am?" "I do. That's why I'm not impressed." Her jaw tightened. No one spoke to her like that. Ever. Jack set his tablet on the bedside table and crouched beside her, his expression softening. "Look, Ms. Zhao, you've been through something serious. You're scared, angry, and probably in more pain than you're willing to admit. But none of that changes the fact that your body needs time, and help, to heal. And I can help you, if you'll let me." Elena looked away, blinking hard. "I don't need help," she whispered. "Everyone does at some point," he replied. "Even CEOs." His voice carried no pity, just quiet conviction. Then, without waiting for her response, he adjusted her pillow, checked her vitals, and said lightly, "I'll be back in the morning. Don't try to get up alone." When he left, the room felt colder. She stared at the door long after it closed, her reflection faint in the dark window opposite the bed, no longer a queen above the city, but a woman trapped in her own stillness. And somewhere deep inside, she hated him for seeing what she couldn't yet admit, that she was afraid. The first session was worse than she imagined. Jack arrived right on time, his usual calm presence filling the sterile room. He wheeled in a set of braces, resistance bands, and a low parallel bar that looked more like an instrument of torture than a tool for recovery. Elena sat stiffly in her wheelchair, arms crossed, every inch of her radiating defiance. "I hope you've brought a miracle," she said dryly. Jack smiled faintly. "No miracles today, just work." He helped her move to the therapy bench, his touch firm but careful. She hated how helpless she felt when he lifted her legs, how easily he maneuvered. Her body like it weighed nothing. The CEO in her wanted to bark orders, regain control, but the woman inside was trembling. "Try to push against my hand," he instructed, kneeling beside her. She stared at him, jaw clenched. "I told you, I can't feel anything. Then we'll start with what you can do." His tone was patient, unshakable. "Your muscles still listen to your brain, they just need to remember how." He placed his palm against her thigh. "Push." She tried. Nothing happened. Sweat prickled at her temples. "See," she hissed. "Pointless." Jack didn't flinch. "It's not pointless. It's day one." They repeated the movement again and again. Minutes dragged into an hour. Her frustration built like a storm, but he didn't raise his voice, didn't look disappointed. When her breathing turned ragged, he handed her a towel. "You're not broken," he said quietly. "You're just rebuilding." She shot him a glare sharp enough to cut steel. "Spare me the motivational speeches, Mr. Miller." He smiled. "Fine, I'll save them for someone who needs them." It was infuriating, the way he stayed so calm, so grounded. Most men around her scrambled to please her, to earn her approval. Jack Miller didn't care who she was, and that unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. Later that afternoon, when Jack's shift ended, his daughter appeared. Lila was maybe 8, with bright eyes and messy braids. She carried a sketchbook under one arm and hesitated in the doorway. "Daddy," she asked softly, "are we still feeding the ducks?" Jack turned, his expression melting into something warm and gentle Elena had never seen before. "In a bit, kiddo. I just need to finish up here." Lila peeked around him and spotted Elena. "Hi," she said shyly. Elena blinked, unused to being addressed so openly. Hello. The girl stepped closer. Are you one of Daddy's patients? Yes, Elena said, her voice softer than intended. I suppose I am. You'll walk again, Lila said matter-of-factly. Daddy always helps people walk again. Elena felt something twist inside her chest, something dangerously close to hope. Is that so? Lila nodded, flipping open her sketchbook. I draw them before and after. Maybe I can draw you too. Jack chuckled. All right, artist, give her some space. But Elena smiled faintly. It's fine. When the girl left, Elena found herself watching the door long after they were gone. The quiet in the room felt different now, not lonely, but expectant. She looked down at her unresponsive legs, tracing the outline of the blanket over them. Maybe tomorrow, she thought. Just maybe, and though she'd never admit it out loud, she was already waiting for the sound of Jack's footsteps in the hall. Weeks blurred into months. The days at St. Augustine's no longer felt endless, though they still began the same way, sunlight slicing through the blinds, the smell of disinfectant, and the sound of Jack's steady footsteps approaching her door. What had once been a cell now felt like a place of change. The woman who had arrived broken and furious had begun, slowly, to piece herself back together. Her legs trembled now when she tried to stand, but they did move. Every step was a battle, every movement, a quiet rebellion against her own fear. Jack guided her through it all, his voice calm, his hands steady at her back. One more time, he said as she clutched the parallel bars. Elena gritted her teeth. You said that 15 minutes ago. I lied, he said with a teasing grin. She wanted to curse him, but laughter bubbled up instead. She wasn't sure when that started happening, when his sarcasm began to draw out her smiles instead of her scorn. When she finally collapsed into her wheelchair, Jack crouched beside her. You know, you're the most stubborn patient I've ever had. I take that as a compliment, she said, breathing hard. It was, he replied softly. There was something in the way he looked at her then, something she didn't know how to face. The kind of gaze that made her feel seen, not as a CEO or a project to fix, but as a woman who had fought her way back from the dark. Later that evening, she found herself in the garden outside the rehab center. The sky blushed with the colors of sunset, gold fading into violet. Lila sat on the grass feeding ducks from her palm, giggling when they nipped too close. Jack stood nearby, his hands tucked into his pockets. Elena wheeled herself over, watching them quietly. She's fearless, she said. Jack smiled, his gaze on his daughter. She had to be. She lost her mom when she was 4. Elena's throat tightened. I'm sorry, he shrugged gently. We've learned to make our own kind of peace. They stood in silence for a while, listening to the soft splash of water and Lila's laughter. Then Jack turned to her. You're leaving soon, aren't you? I think so, she said. The doctors cleared me for light mobility. My company's falling apart without me. He nodded, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. You'll be fine. I'll survive, she said, then added quietly, but that's not the same thing, is it? That night, Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed with endless messages, reports, meeting requests, demands. Yet she didn't answer any of them. For the first time, she hesitated. A week later, she stood, unaided, for the first time. The room erupted in applause from the nurses nearby, but she didn't hear them. She was looking at Jack. He stood at the end of the bars, smiling, pride shining in his eyes. She took one step, then another. Her balance wavered, but she caught herself. When she reached him, she laughed, breathless, trembling, alive. I told you you'd walk again, he said. You were right, she whispered. But I didn't do it alone. Outside, the world stretched wide and open before her. She had conquered markets, destroyed rivals, and built empires, but none of it compared to the simple victory of standing beside someone who had taught her how to fall, and more importantly, how to rise again.